noisemaker down here. He's not ready. He's not ready to be cuddled right now. Good morning. Alright. Waking up. Let's go ahead and get into 2 Chronicles, part 2. We did conceal David, and we talked about David's growth and the end of his journey. Now we are going to finish off Solomon as well. We started with Solomon as well, I believe, in this first part of 2 Chronicles. But let's go ahead and read a little bit more about finishing the temple, about Solomon, which we have read before, but again, just to go ahead and really emphasize his role in Israel. So let's start out with the quote here. Earned a precarious living by taking in one another's washing. This was attributed to Mark Twain, but by William Morris in the Commonweal, 6th of August, 1887. More or less, I don't know if Mark Twain had commented on this or what have you, but I don't think this was a specific quote by him. That's just how Google will bring it up. If you try to Google the quote by William Morris in the Commonweal, you don't get too much. But what does this mean? If we're actually looking at it within the context at which this was written, during when this was written, people would, to make extra money, right, or to help one another out, a neighbor, what have you, kind of doing your own business, like a home business or an entrepreneurial business. People would take others' washes, like things that needed to be washed, laundry, and they would do their laundry for them and make a living that way. So that was a common thing way back in the 1800s, okay? But when we think about the act of taking in another's dirty work, if you will, chores, things like that, it's actually service, right? We enact service for others, and then that's the same with a lot of our services here today. I mean, we still have laundromats, fluff and folds, car maintenance. We have a bunch of services that we operate here today. Tying this in, though, we have many people of the Israelite kingdom offering their services, as we have read. Building the temple, everybody has their own service that they can practice. And even King Solomon, remembering that, yes, he's wealthy, yes, he's a king, yes, he has an abundance of everything we could ever imagine, but even his role as king, same as David, was a service, okay? They're serving the people, still in their role of glory and kingship and honor. They are still servants at the end of the day to the people, and also, more importantly, to the Lord. So when you think about services, you think about how everybody is offering their services one way or the next. You're serving others, in turn serving the Lord as well. So serving others is a really important key thing to grasp here in this part of 2 Chronicles. So let's go ahead and move along. We're going to start out with chapter 7. It says here, when Solomon finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. Solomon consecrated the middle part of the courtyard in front of the temple of the Lord, and there he offered burnt offerings and the fat of the fellowship offerings, because the bronze altar he had made could not hold the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, and the fat portions. Alright, so we did talk about Solomon's attention to detail. You think he'd make an altar big enough, but again, this is more of a nod to the abundance that he had, right? The abundance that he himself had to offer, the people themselves, the priests themselves, to the Lord. They had an abundance to offer the Lord. They had to make room for that abundance. Then the Lord appeared to him, Solomon, at night. He says, "As for you, if you walk before me faithfully, as David your father did, and do all I command, and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne, as I covenanted with your father when I said, you shall never fail to have a successor rule over Israel." And as we read through 1st and 2nd Kings, we found that to be true. Okay, we remember the line of Israel. It was Judah. We had Judah, and then we had all of Israel. And now I am being tempted, or I shouldn't say tempted, I am being guided to go and look real quick, just because I am getting a little bit of confusion, but I do believe it was all Israel. Give me a moment. I'm just looking at my sheet. Remember our sheet of kings? Okay, so this is where it does get a little bit confusing, because we do have a king ruling over all Israel, but then we also have all of Judah, and Judah was more like Jerusalem, okay? So it gets a little confusing, and all Israel was everywhere else. So when we look at the king's line in Judah specifically, we do have King Solomon, starting with King Solomon, and it does not fail to be broken up so much as opposed to Israel. Israel was a little bit broken up. We had some sons rule, but then somebody would come in and interrupt the bloodline. Somebody else would rule. Judah was not really that way. They had more of their actual descendants ruling cohesively, okay, and connecting to each other. Of course, people made mistakes. There was definitely several kings that did not follow the ways of Solomon or David, and they had made errors, which is why eventually the line of kings did have to end. But it did last quite a bit longer than the rulers or the kings over all of Judah. I shouldn't say this. They were rulers and kings, but they were a bit more problematic than even Judah. So let's go ahead and move along here. At the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built the temple of the Lord and his own palace, there were still people left from the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These people were not Israelites. Okay? So if we remember these words, okay, lots of these tribes were the enemies of Israel, but eventually they had really humbled themselves, and there were large portions of individuals really moving into Jerusalem during this time. So what do you think these individuals were classified as? Slaves. This is where we have some slavery, very open, and at the forefront of the Bible. There really isn't a lot of shame attached to it, because of course the definition has moved and grooved over time, but they were in fact slaves. It is never a pleasant positioning to encounter, okay, being slaves. Israelites were slaves. Ian had also mentioned that really every race, many nations, every race at one point in time went through slavery. There's really no one that is exempt from being held in this subservient position, and they are really the ultimate servants when you think about it. But yeah, I digress with that. But everybody has gone through the slavery process, every race. Why it has such a sour taste to us now, why it always should have a sour taste, is because we do have our African nations being really the last of the races to actually endure that. So it's something that we remember. It's something that we hold a bitter heart towards and want to move away from. It's just right there, and it definitely was a more forceful nature of servitude and slavery. So it definitely wasn't a good thing, but everybody's gone through it, and that was the last one where we actually took a stand and put an end to this for the most part. Although we can argue slavery is still around in our criminal and justice system, criminal injustice, and are within our jails and things like that. So let's go ahead and continue on. Then Solomon went to Ezion Geber and Elath on the coast of Edom. And Hiram sent ships commanded by his own men, sailors who knew the sea. So Solomon was gifted really fleets, oceanic fleets, and they had obtained a lot of their wealth from going to other nations, kind of almost being like pirates in a way, but really traveling by the sea. And this was something new for Israel as well. So Solomon was very much doing these things that have never been done before, which is why he had accumulated so much, but also because he asked for that wisdom. He was granted access into areas that other kings were not granted access. It says here, when the queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, she came to Jerusalem to test him with hard questions. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for him to explain to her. She exclaims, "How happy your people must be! How happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom!" King Solomon gave the queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for. He gave her more than she had brought to him. Then she left and returned with her retinue to her own country. Okay, so they had a meeting of minds, if you will, a meeting of minds, and Sheba, Queen Sheba, right? We remember actually in our chart the name Sheba. Okay, it comes from that descendant over under Ham, right? So big nation by this time. Okay, extremely wealthy nation and queen. But anyways, they had a meeting of minds, and she was blessed with a lot of goods and trading materials. And then we go ahead and continue here. Then the king had made a great throne covered with ivory and overlaid with pure gold. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as a sycamore-fig tree in the foothills. Solomon reigned in Israel, in Jerusalem, over all Israel 40 years. Okay, then he rested with his ancestors, and he was buried in the city of David, his father, and Rehoboam, his son, succeeded him as king. So this is actually the part where I got a little bit confused, because we talked so expressly in our chart that, Solomon was really on the side of Israel and not necessarily all Israel. But really Solomon was the head, okay? He was the ruler over all Israel. But there were some conflicts with the king Jeroboam that wanted to usurp all Israel and take over everything besides Jerusalem. And that conflict did go on through Solomon's son Rehoboam, through his son Abijah, and then finally King Asa puts an end to Jeroboam, but then we have Jeroboam's son Nadab that also comes in. So there were conflicts. It wasn't absolute, and especially more so occurred toward the end of Solomon's reign. As he got older, right, people find that they can take more and more advantage, and that was pretty much the circumstance there. But let's go ahead and put an end to this reading. I appreciate you guys for listening and learning with me. As always, it's a joy. And I will go ahead and leave you with this. That's all I have. Okay? Have a good rest of your day. God bless you. Talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.